I hope that you're going to really enjoy this entire course. Right now, you've theoretically completed module number 1, which is the overview of preparing for success after prison. You may have completed module number 2, which is on defining success and identifying your values. Number 3, which is on setting clear goals that align with those values. Let's see, the overview, values, goals. Then there was attitude. You got to have the right attitude if you want to become something more than what others say you can become. 5, you've got to have an aspiration and see what's, to build your life. 6, you've definitely got to take action, and you want to take the right actions. You don't want to take actions like the crabs in the bucket, but instead you want to be successful. What about 7? You got to hold yourself accountable, right? And holding yourself accountable in prison is really tough because time is passing and that time seems to drag on forever. I remember when I was in prison, I used to have to think of the visiting days that would be extra because I was in federal prison. And in federal prison, I used to be able to visit on Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays. In higher security prisons, later it became in minimum security prisons. It was only on Saturdays and Sundays. But there were always rules. But on holidays, federal holidays, we were authorized visiting. And so I used to kind of go through the year thinking about all of the federal holidays. And I used to know them by heart because they were like an accountability metric for me. They were one of the ways I got through. And I would say, okay, I'm going to have this done by this visiting day and this done by this visiting day, extra visiting days, holidays. So that forced me to remember all the federal holidays. And I'm going to see, I've been out of prison now for almost 8 years, but I was in there for so long, I think I could probably still remember the holidays. So let me see. January 1st, which was New Year's Day. Then there was January 15th, well, around that time, which was Martin Luther King's birthday. I'll never forget that one because that was also my birthday. So January, there were 2 visiting days. February, there was President's Day. March, there was not a federal holiday. April, there was not a federal holiday. May, there was Memorial Day. June, there was no federal holiday. July, there was the 4th of July. August, there was no federal holiday. September was Memorial Day, the first Monday in September. October, there was something like a Voters' Day or something, as I recall. Veterans Day. I thought there was 2. No, there's 2 in November. November, there was... Maybe October there was not a holiday. I know there was Halloween, but that's not a federal holiday. I forgot. But I know in November there was 2. There was Veterans Day and there was Thanksgiving. And then December there was the Christmas holiday. So those were the holidays that I remember in federal prison. You can do your own research and see if I remembered them. But those were some of the accountability metrics I used to set. I did that the entire journey. And it made all the difference in the world. In Earning Freedom, the book that's a part of this course, you remember how Malcolm X influenced me with that biography of Malcolm X, where he's sitting inside of a jail cell and teaching himself vocabulary, how to build his vocabulary. And that was a big deal for me. I had to learn how to hold myself accountable to develop a vocabulary because I didn't know how to do it. Right? I mean, I was a terrible student in high school and all through school. But when I was in prison, I'd start reading these books and every paragraph, basically, I'd come across words that I didn't know or that I didn't understand. And, I used to just skip over them. But when I got inspired by Malcolm X, I realized I really need to learn to change the way that I talk. I really need to learn how to communicate like the person I aspire to become. One time, I don't know why I was in the room with the prosecutor because I went to trial. But at some point, I remember being at a conference or something like that with my defense attorney and the prosecutor that was taking me to trial or maybe it was a DE agent. I don't know. They were trying to get me to flip or something. And I was, being the recalcitrant type of kid I was, ignoring them. I remember one time I told them, I'm not the usual trash you're used to dealing with. And that didn't go over so well with them. I mean, I made every bad decision a guy could make. And I got to hold myself accountable for it. It led to a 45-year prison sentence. But I remember sitting in there and I don't know if it was the prosecutor or the DE agent when they were trying to say something about me or other. And he described himself as a cynical prosecutor. And he probably said something like that. I'm a cynical prosecutor. I see a guy like you and I see a bad future. And that's why we're going to get you for life or some, whatever they were trying to say to me. And I think that was the situation. And I remember telling him I wasn't the usual trash he was used to dealing with because I was saying I didn't do it, when in fact I knew I didn't do it. I knew I did it. But I remember that day as saying, God, I feel really stupid. I don't know the word cynical. I don't know what he meant. And that's what pushed me to say, I got to start developing my vocabulary. And it pushed me to start going through those exercises that I learned from Malcolm X of finding a word I didn't know, writing it on an index card, turning it over, writing the definition, using it in a form of speech, writing my own sentence. And that is why I can say to you, I'm not asking you to do anything that I didn't do. All these courses, all these modules are forcing you to develop your vocabulary. Because if you develop your vocabulary, you build strength. You build power. You become more influential. You can become more persuasive. It's words that will make you more persuasive. It's practice in using words. And as you develop that vocabulary, you're also going to develop confidence. When I was going through those exercises, I kind of learned that I could learn, as I recall, or add into my vocabulary 25 or 50 words every week and become so confident that I knew them that I would challenge people and say, and I throw them their list of words, and those words would look, kind of college SAT words. But I would say, I'll bet you I know every word in that index card stack. If I don't, I will do 10 push-ups or 25 push-ups for every word I don't get. But if I get them all, you got to give me 25 push-ups on demand. So in the chow hall, wherever we were. And that little exercise, I would have to really hold myself accountable and be totally confident I could deliver. Otherwise, I'd be doing push-ups all over the place, which isn't the end of the world anyway. The point I'm making is that you've got to develop your own accountability metrics. They got to be meaningful to you. They should align with those values and goals that you set. They should align with what you want to become. And that takes me to this book that I'm showing you right here. I might only be using it as a prop, but one of the cool things about CDCR is they've allowed me to bring another program in there. So you're working through right now Preparing for Success After Prison. That's one course. But earlier this year, through, a good development of a relationship that I have with some of the leadership team at CDCR, we got an opportunity to develop an entirely new course. That new course really started from this journal right here. And I started building this journal a long time ago, long before I sold it to anybody. I was sitting in my house here where I live, and the world had kind of just stopped with the pandemic. And I figured, well, you can't leave your house. I better figure out something to do. One little secret about serving time in prison is if you serve 26 years in prison, a national quarantine doesn't mean anything to you at all, because we get really used to living in confined spaces. And I'm in a confined space, but it's a lot better than where I served the first, those 26 years in prison. And I know that your future is going to be a lot better than where you are right now. But it's not going to happen by accident. You've got to create pathways that will lead to your success. And an accountability metric really moves the needle. It really makes sense for you. You don't want to participate in programs like this because you get a milestone credit. although that's kind of nice to get a little time off your sentence, the real success is if you figure out how your time in prison can put you on a pathway to building a new business, or to creating your own income stream, or to overcoming the challenges that complicate life for so many other people who are in prison. And that's the reason we create these courses. That's the reason we created our next course, which is called Self-Directed Journaling 101. So we want you to be able to lay out the future for yourself as you define success. But I also got to ask you to hold yourself accountable. And that's why it's so important to go through these lessons, because your administrators are going to hold me accountable. If you don't get 70% right on these quizzes, well, then I'm failing as an instructor. If you don't get 70% correct on the final exam, I don't look at it as it being your fault. It's my fault. I failed. I don't want to fail. That's why I'm going to give you all the answers. Okay? I'm going to teach the quiz. So here's the story of the quiz for module number 7. The first question is, what did the phrase, "the unexamined life is not worth living," mean to Aristotle? I'm going to tell you. A person should learn the relationship between biology and human behavior. That's one of the options. Number 2, if a person doesn't know how different body parts interrelate, the person cannot reach his or her highest potential. Option number 3, by reflecting on our past decisions, we can learn and prepare to make better decisions going forward. Here's a hint. That's the answer. Number 4, to improve our prospects for success, we should watch our diets closely. Well, all of those things may be true, but the answer is number 3. By reflecting on our past decisions, we can learn and prepare to make better decisions going forward. That's what Aristotle meant when he said, the unexamined life is not worth living. If you don't look back at your past decisions and see how those past decisions influence where you are right now, well, my friend, your life might not be worth living. At least that's what Aristotle said. And do you know who Aristotle is, by the way? No, you should learn. He's a very influential philosopher. Okay, number 2. How did an accountability log the author created influence his prospects for success upon release? 1, he could show that since he served 26 years, he was entitled to a job. Well, I've never felt entitled to anything. In fact, I don't think I'm employable. That's kind of how I go through life. Nobody's ever going to give me a job because I look at myself as being unemployable. I was in prison. I got to learn how to create my own jobs. Number 2, he could argue that since he served 26 years, the parole board should release him. I didn't think that at all. I decided to serve every day of my sentence. Some people get confused about that because my judge sentenced me to 45 years, but I only served 26 years. Well, it wasn't because of a parole board. When I went to prison, there was a different sentencing scheme in place. And as long as you didn't get in trouble, you got good time. I think that whole word, that concept of good time, it doesn't make any sense because I didn't have to do anything good to get out of prison in 26 years. I just had to not get in trouble. As long as I didn't get in trouble, I got all the good time and I could finish 45 years in 26 years. It's a lot different than that now because the whole system has changed. So that's not the answer. How about 3? He argued that he wouldn't have gone to prison if people didn't tell on him. I've never blamed the people that told on me as the reason I went to prison. I went to prison because I made the wrong decisions. I broke the law. The law held for a long prison term. That's just the end of the story. Number 4, he could rely upon his accountability log as a resource to persuade prospective business partners to invest in his future. Absolutely right. What are you doing to prepare for your future? Here's number 3 on the assessment guide. Who is responsible for creating an accountability metric that would document a person's commitment to success? Who's responsible? Here's your options. 1, the prison administration. If you think the prison administration is responsible for your success, well, you're in the wrong course. You should be in the cuckoo course. The prison administration is responsible for keeping you locked up. You're responsible for creating success. Number 2, the case manager. I don't think the case manager is responsible for your success. The case manager is going to keep track of things, but you're responsible for your success. Number 3, the other people who are serving time in prison are responsible for your success. No. So if they're not responsible for your success, it probably makes sense for you not to listen to all the nonsense you hear in prison. But what is responsible? That's number 4 here. The person that claims to want to succeed. If you talk about wanting to be successful, then you are responsible for delivering. Don't make excuses. Like my friend Lee Knobman says, don't come forward with the loser's limp. You know what the loser's limp is? The loser's limp is like that guy who's a football pass. Lee used to use that subscription. The guy throws a long bomb, and the guy goes and he doesn't catch it. And as soon as he doesn't catch it, he kind of falls and kind of gets up and acts like he's got a limp. That's the loser's limp. It's the guy who's always got an excuse for why he didn't make the play. You got to make the play, buddy. That's what this class is about. Be a winner. Make sense. Make plays happen. Don't wait for life to happen to you. Number 4, in what ways did the Enlightenment era influence prison reform? That's a tough one. You might not even remember what the Enlightenment era is. I wrote about it in Earning Freedom, and I wrote about it in this module, which is module number 7. I'll remind you before we get into this. The Enlightenment era really started around the year 1400, I think, and it lasted until around 1700. Because we had this area called the plague, the bubonic plague, where it devastated and wiped out about 40% or so of the world's population. And when all those people died, we kind of went into the Dark Ages, which is when there was very little innovation in the history of mankind. But the Enlightenment came and everything changed. People started to see the world differently. People became enlightened. So that's a little clue for quiz number 4. Or question number 4. Here are your options. The Enlightenment era helped people see that sentences were too long. That's not the answer. 2. The Enlightenment era helped leaders recognize that we need to provide better living conditions in prison. That's not the answer. Prisons did not exist during the Enlightenment era. Well, they did at the end of the Enlightenment era, but not in the beginning. C. The Enlightenment era helped leaders recognize that people had the capacity to change and grow. You see, before the Enlightenment era, they used to respond to any type of criminal behavior with corporal punishment. That's a big word for you, corporal. What does that mean? It means they inflict pain on the body. So during the Dark Ages, they used to drill holes in people. They used to chop off their heads and put them on a stake. I think they still do that in some parts of the world, but not in the United States. So number 5, what does the word capacity mean? It means unconcerned with serious matters. It means easily taken advantage of. It means an empty container. Here's a clue. All those answers are wrong. Here's the right answer. The capacity means the maximum amount that something can attain, right? I've got a capacity for a lot of work, okay? What's your capacity? Do you have the capacity to study hard? Do you have the capacity to reject the criminal lifestyle? Do you have the capacity to pursue excellence and be the best in the world at something? I believe you do. Everybody on our team believes you do. So tune out the negativity and focus on achieving your highest potential. Number 6, why do accountability logs matter? Here's your 4 options. 1, they show why we're special. 2, they get us more advantages while in prison. 3, they allow us to measure progress toward the incremental goals we set. And 4, they lead to getting out of prison early. Well, there's only one correct answer here, and that's they allow us to measure progress toward the incremental goals we set. Remember, you're responsible for pursuing excellence. Make sure you do it. Number 7, when should we start creating an accountability log? Here's your 4 options. Never. There are too many people already trying to hold me accountable. Well, that may be true, but that's the wrong answer. 2, we should start our accountability journal when we get out of prison. Sure, that's a good path if you want to come back to prison. You know the story that I wrote about, I don't remember what I called him in the book. I remember his real name, but I think we'll just call him Red, who got out of prison just around the time I was coming into prison. And it didn't take him long. Maybe it was about another year and a half. And he came back with a fresh 25 years because he robbed the bank. Why? Because he didn't prepare during the first 10 years that he served. So he got out, faced nothing but hardship, and before you know it, back in prison. Not cool. Okay. Makes my job harder because I'm trying to get shorter sentences, but I need guys to stay out of prison to do it. What's that? Number 3, we should ask prison staff if we can use the same accountability tools they use to track our progress so we don't have to waste time creating our own. I wouldn't rely on prison administrators to do anything for me. You got to do it yourself. If you want to be successful, create your own path. Create your own accountability metrics. And that leads us to number 4, which is the right answer. We should create an accountability log today that will measure the progress we're making toward the goals that we set. Number 8. In what ways did waiting for calendar pages to turn influence prospects for a successful return to society? A, if we simply wait for calendar pages to turn without showing a disciplined, deliberate plan, we're missing an opportunity to influence prospects for a successful return to society. That's the right answer. Here's some wrong answers. Don't choose these. There isn't anything we can do to influence the passing of time. It may be true, but it's the wrong answer. C, if we concentrate, we can make days, weeks, and months seem like they pass faster. Well, that may be true, but it's the wrong answer. Here's number 4. Our future doesn't depend on the number of calendar pages that turn. May be true, but it's not the right answer. Number 9. What does the word epic mean? And you might even know how to pronounce it because it's spelled E-P-O-C-H. Like it could be looked at epoch or epoch. I don't know. But the way you pronounce it out here is epic. And I wouldn't have known that when I was starting prison. In fact, there's a lot of funny stories in Earning Freedom about how I was learning to build my vocabulary and how I got words like epic wrong. Here's your 4 options. To have an ambitious plan or goal. Wrong answer. No name or identity. Wrong answer. An absence of emotion and enthusiasm. Wrong answer. You want to know the right answer for epic? It's a distinctive period in the history of someone or something, right? The Hellenic period. That was an epic. The Greek epic. That's when Aristotle lived and Socrates and Plato. You know, that's the Hellenic epic. It's one of the words in your vocabulary lessons for this module too. Finally, the last question in this assessment quiz is, what did Steve Ballmer say about great companies? Who's Steve Ballmer? That's a bonus question. Steve Ballmer said that great companies operate with high cultures of accountability. One option. Steve Ballmer said that great companies get to be great by luck. Steve Ballmer says it takes a lot of money to start a great company. Steve Ballmer said a company becomes great once it earns more than $1 million. Well, Steve Ballmer only said one of those things because he's not an idiot. Steve Ballmer said that great companies operate with high cultures of accountability. And for those of you who don't know, Steve Ballmer he used to be the CEO of Microsoft, and there's a great story about him meeting Bill Gates when they were at Harvard. They became friends at Harvard. Bill Gates went on to found Microsoft, dropped out of Harvard to start Microsoft with Paul Allen. And as it started to grow, what did Bill Gates know? Despite how smart he was, he knew he needed to surround himself with super smart people. And he needed to hold himself accountable. And one of his new hires that he brought was Steve Ballmer. When Steve Ballmer was contemplating going to Stanford Business School, Bill Gates hired him And he became eventually the president of Microsoft. And then when Bill Gates stepped down, Steve Ballmer became CEO. And now he's the owner of a basketball team. Basketball team? Yeah, I think it's a basketball. He owns a basketball team here in Los Angeles. I think he owns the Clippers. And there's a funny story about that it's just a side note I'll tell you. And it's a story about when they were selling the Clippers. I forgot the other guy's name. I think his name was Sterling. Some scandal resulted in him having to sell the Clippers. And there was a rich family led by Magic Johnson, this Magic Johnson group that was going to buy the Clippers. And they had all kinds of negotiations, and they offered it something like $1 billion or $1.5 billion or whatever it was. But there were going to be all these conditions and earnouts and things of that sort. And the deal was effectively done. And the owner of the Clippers that was going to make the decision was about to make a deal. Steve Ballmer flew in on his jet, sat across the table, said, "Here's a check for $2 billion. You can cash it on Monday. I want to buy the team." And that's how he got to buy the Clippers. I don't know if that's folklore or not, but that's a story I hold, and I'll stick by it. I'm Michael Sanchez with Prison Professors. We believe in you. Make sure that you get 70% on this quiz. I just gave you the answers, and I'm holding you accountable to deliver.